Hello students, welcome to the political science class. This is your Puja teacher and you all are switched on to history and political science class. Today we begin with political science chapter 4, social and political movements. So students, please get ready for the class. Before this we have done with Heritage Management, History, Chapter 9. And now, here we take a start with the social and political movements. So students, what idea behind this must be to suggest the topic social and political movements for the students of standard 10th. Why? Is it the need of the time that the young generation should understand the value of social and political movements? Yes. Students, right now, its situation is so much demanding that one has to know thorough knowledge about social and political movements in pre-independence time and in post-independence period. Please take note. I repeat, pre-independence period and post-independence period. So, when the word we say movements, so movement is a noun. And what does it mean? First, I will just focus on the word movement. So movement is a group of diffusedly organized people or organizations striving towards a common goal relating to human society or social change, or the organized activities of such a group. So students, please take note. A movement is nothing but an organized activity of a group. And the group is striving towards a common goal relating to the human society or social change. So this is what movement is. Now, as you could see on the screen, movement against child marriage has been successful to a great extent, and the extent of child marriages have reduced by 50%. The workers in this movement worked very consciously. Next, workers from the movement against dowry also helped them. Now there is a need to start a drive against malnutrition, because poverty and malnutrition are two important problems to be taken on priority basis. So students, here I have dealt with two types of movements. First is very much like social movement, and the other is very much related to somewhat political type of movement. So please take note. The issues, the exploitations of child marriages, dowry system, malnutrition, all this could be the good subject of raising a movement, because these areas do need government's attention. So students, please take note, in our country there are masses, those who are undergoing certain sufferings, and they do strive hard for justice. So, here as we are dealing with social and political movements, let us get to know the objectives, the learning objectives of social and political movements. that why I should learn this social movement, why I should learn about the political movements. Students, very first, I make clear to you that by the end of this particular text, you will be able to demonstrate awareness of social movements on a state, national, and global level. You will be also able to distinguish between different types of social movements. You will be also able to identify stages of social movements. And you will be very much able to discuss theoretical perspectives on social movements like resource mobilization, farming, and new social movement theory, and so on. So this text will help you a lot dealing with the social movements. Then what about the political movement? Students, please take note, the goals of political movements are often about making an impact on policy in the political sphere or achieving social change in general. While political movements involve both dealing with conflicts and compromise. So students, please keep in mind that whenever certain political movement do take place, there are conflicts, there are compromises. So students, the discourse of these movements tends to consist of confrontational nature. Confrontational nature means face-to-face approach. Okay, direct. The platform is open for political scenario. Media is efficiently working to get the news from the political arena to all of us. Now students, if I want to study political movement, so by the end of this particular text, definitely I will be able to understand what is political movement. Yes, this particular text will teach me about political movement, that political movement is a collective attempt by a group of people to change government, policy, or social values. Political movements are usually in opposition to an element of status quo and are often associated with certain ideology. Ideology, that is, way of thinking, differs from person to person. Then students, political movements also deals with some theories of political movements and are the political opportunity theories, which states that political movements stems from mere circumstances. Yeah, something happens and then there is a movement. And the resource mobilization theory, which states that political movements result from strategic organization and relevant sources. Students, political movements are also related to political parties in the sense that they both aim to make an impact on the government, and that several political parties have emerged from initial political movements. Please take note. While political parties are engaged with multitude of issues, political movements tend to focus on only one major issue. So this is about social and political movements. And fortunately, we are going to deal with this particular topic, which is very much arresting. Now students, please take note. I would like just to scroll down the pages for you, that what we are going to study in this particular chapter. Of course, we'll study why movements, and after dealing with why movements, we will deal with important movements in India. Number one, tribal movement. Number 2, farmers movement in India. Okay. Next, women's movement. Next, environment movements. Next, consumer movement. Okay. So we have reached the end of this text. So students, please take note, as we are going to study so many movements, in this particular session, we'll deal only with the tribal movement, okay? Because that would be enough for you. And then I would proceed one by one towards the other movements. So today we are just going to discuss about the tribal movement. So let's go back to the first page and take a start. Okay. So students, as I have made the concept clear to you about the social and the political movements, its significance and need to understand the strategy of the movements and in what way it will be helpful for us. So right now, if I have read the article from the newspaper and that particular article was speaking about the movement against child marriage or the movement against dowry or the movement or a drive against malnutrition. So this particular titles are very much striking in nature because poverty and malnutrition are two important problems that the government has to put on the priority basis. Means to first solve the problems of these two problems. So in the above newspaper item, different movements are included. Can you explain their meaning? This news deals with different subjects or movements related to only one issue. If different movements cooperate with each other, will they be more effective? Students, see some interrogative questions. These questions are very much rhetoric type, where the publisher wants us to reflect over these questions and to take a pause and think and rethink over it about these questions. So students, as I read from the screen, please pay attention in your textbook. In the last chapter, we got information about the national and regional parties. Yes, the previous chapter was about the political parties. So political parties compete for political power. They win elections and try to resolve the problems of the common man. Political parties generally adopt a comprehensive perspective. They cannot concentrate on just one particular issue, from public cleanliness to space research. Please take note. So many problems, so many issues are lined up. Okay, so right from public cleanliness to space research, they have to take into consideration all matters from national perspective and take decisions. Now students, please take note. Here, something that is stated that when we are dealing with a movement is said to be a comprehensive perspective. Please underline comprehensive perspective. Students, the meaning of comprehensive perspective means a large scope or covering or involving much, inclusive, a comprehensive study of world affairs. As the political parties deals thoroughly understanding with one's mind, having an extensive mental range or grasp as of a particular subject or many subjects. So this is what comprehensive perspective means. Means one has to think at the larger interest with much more wider scope, and the vision should be very much broadened in nature, not narrow-minded or not sophisticated one, but overall a huge coverage should be for the comprehensive perspective. So political parties, they do deal with it because they have many topics. So here it is stated that yes, the political movements, they start up right from public cleanliness up to the space research, and they have to take into consideration all the matters from national perspectives. Now, what do you understand by a national perspective? Students, a national perspective, please underline in the textbook. A national perspective is the view that a particular country or government has on an issue, which is usually inferred from their laws, policies, or speeches made by national politicians. So please take note. The aura of comprehensive perspective and national perspective, they go hand in hand, they are complementary to each other, and they do need to work together for the betterment of the society. Further, I read that national perspective should be taken into account, their decisions, their suggestions, and then only the things would come at the to the final conclusion. Okay. Now here, political parties are expected to have a program for problems of all sections of the society. Yeah, rich class, poor class, weaker section of the society, ignored, neglected section of the society, women, children, exploited men. So here it is said that yes, political parties are expected to have a program for the problems of all section of the society. Not only the rich class, not only the well-to-do class. Political parties adopt policies taking into account the interest of all farmers, laborers, businessmen, women, youth, and senior citizens. Now see the categories. Political parties, they do deal with all this strata of the society, people belonging to this strata of the society, belonging to different sections. So farmers' problems, laborers' problems, businessmen's challenges, women emancipation, okay, youth, challenges for youth, problems, and senior citizens as well. Then the question arises that in order to solve the problems of the people belonging to different strata of the society, why movements? Why do we need a movement? As I state that yes, a movement is an organized activity of a particular group. So why organized activity? So pay attention students, that all the people in the society cannot participate in the political parties and contribute to social welfare. Some people focus on a particular issues and pursue, spelling mistake is there, please check, Pursue, okay. Some people focus on a political issues and pursue it. They organize people and try to pressurize the government to resolve that issue. They constantly follow up on the issue, build public opinion about it, and thereby put up a pressure on political parties and the government. This type of organized activity is called a movement. Organized activity is the essence of any movement. Underline this. Such movements are very important in a democracy. Different social problems come under discussion through these movements. The government then has to pay attention to such problems. Leaders and activists of the movement provide necessary information about those issues to the government. This information is very useful for the government while making policies. Some movements aim at opposing a particular decision or policy of the government. The right to protest is considered an important right in democracy. However, this right needs to be used patiently and responsibly. So students, as we have discussed, some movements, this activity is very important because our country, India, is being governed on the democratic pattern. So movement, public participation, public agitation, public negotiation, public understanding, very important. Then only we can say that democracy is surviving. Democracy is breathing in my country, India. Okay. So something that is important is the collective information what we should get, what the common people should get from the government. And media is doing their job very accurately. Students, please take note, this information what we collect from the communication sources, communicative sources are very important. So as we are speaking about the movements, we get to know that so many movements, if just switch on the television and you will get to know every day there are some or the other movements going on in different parts of the world. Yes, across India, across Maharashtra. So some movements aim at opposing a particular decision or policy of the government. Yeah. So right to protest is considered an important right in democracy. Right to protest. If you feel that any injustice is been inflicted on you, you have right to raise your voice against the exploitation, against the injustice. Take note, students, the Constitution of India, those 6 fundamental rights. So we have this one important clause, one important right with regard to exploitation, injustice inflicted. Then we have right to protest. So, however, this rights needs to be used patiently and responsibly. Please take note, very important. Yes, government constitution has given us the rights and just use it in a haphazard manner, use it randomly. That will not make any sense. If you want to make proper usage of this right, you need to perform certain corresponding duties. Yeah. So students, can you tell which movement in India are actively working for rehabilitation of the displaced and to secure their livelihood? Please try to get this answer. Very important. Working for rehabilitation of the displaced. Rehabilitation means restoring the injured minds, restoring the injured characters back to the normal life. Therefore, we have rehabilitation centers. And to what extent they help to secure their livelihood? Students, please take note. When I say that injustice, exploitation is faced by majority of the people in India, then how to bring them back to the normal life? We have so many prisoners in the jail. They were not born as criminals, but the situation, the circumstances made them the criminals. Now we need to bring them back to the normal life. So rehabilitation centers are available to bring them back to their normalcy life. Okay. What is a movement? Fine, now we are dealing with the topic. Why movement? So we need a movement. We need a movement, a strong protest, a strong voice which will open the ears of the government. We want the government, we want the political parties to listen to the problems of the common people. And therefore, movement is the need of the time. Then what is a movement? A movement is a collective action. People's active participation is expected in the movement. A movement can be formed when people come together in the interest of a particular issue. For example, pollution can be a single issue for which a movement can be created. A movement has a particular social objective or a focused problem. For example, movement against corruption aims at ending corruption. Yes, so true. Movements have a leadership. Leadership keeps the movement active. Objectives of the movement, program of action, strategy of agitation are decided by its leader. A strong leadership makes movement effective. Please take note. So the leader should be very much appropriate one, reliable one, who will direct the masses. And then only you can say that the movement has turned to an effective turning point. So students, movements have organizations. Yes. So organization is a group of people coming together in order to achieve a particular aim. As we all know what is an organization. So movement have organizations. Without an organization, it becomes difficult to follow up the issues. So coming together and working together as an organization is must. For example, farmers organization works for farmers movement. Any movement requires public support. People should feel connected to the issue that is undertaken by the movement. Movements have a program of action which helps them to shape the public opinion. Okay? So please take note. Action is very important. The needed steps taken, constructive steps taken towards any particular movement, very important. Action is important. Okay, which will help them to shape public opinion. So students, in the inset I discuss, generally the movements are devoted to one particular issue but have an ideology behind them. Ideology, that is Vichardhara. For example, movements against child marriage, dowry, believe in the values of democracy, women empowerment and social equality. Sometimes some movements gradually get transformed into political parties. Please take note. I just don't want to name out any political party. I don't want to take name of any political leader over here. That would not be good. And the teachers don't have right to explain with certain examples and demonstration this way and that way. Just we are teaching you to whom to connect, how to connect yourself with the present scenario. It is very much up to you, my dear students. Okay, we will just show you the direction. To follow it or not, it is very much up to you. So, sometimes some movements gradually get transformed into political parties. Now see the picture. Okay. Yeah, I think you must be missing your school uniform. So many students here in their school uniform and bags on their shoulders. Read the following dialogue and write a paragraph on it. Students, please take note, this is an activity. Certain activities are very much expected in the board exams. Okay, so they are raising their voice. Just I will read it quickly. What are the issues raised by the students? If the human rights movement becomes influential worldwide, there is no need for other movements. Next, but the problem in developing countries are of different nature. Different social, economic and cultural conditions may give rise to different movements. Next, it's true, otherwise we would not have said save girls. Next, we can get an experience of movement here itself. Can we start a movement to make the school surrounding safe for girls? Next, Movements were suppressed during the British period, but in democratic system, existence of movements is an indicator of healthy democratic system. Okay, so this is about. And now, can you tell which movement in India led to the filing of public interest? Students, here is some correction in the textbook. I just want you to do it, okay? It is said that can you tell? Please cancel that can you tell and write can you find out. Okay? Write with the pencil in your textbook. Can you find out? Which movement in India led to the filing of public interest litigation and judiciary had to give decision regarding PIL. Okay, regarding PIL. It is not over PIL, but it should be decision regarding PIL. Just make the correction. There's a printing mistake there. Next, name the movement started by Mahatma Gandhi, Mahatma Phule, Sant Gadge Maharaj and Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. Next, discuss on which issues does the son of the soil movements in India insist. You will get all these answers on Google. Please take note. Do this. One activity suggested. Collect the news in the newspapers about the movements such as Andhashraddha Nirmulan movement, movement to stop the pollution of the rivers, movement against female foeticide, not in my name, etc. So please, all these particular movements do take place now and then, maybe about the superstitious beliefs, that is Andhashraddha Nirmulan movement, means fighting against the superstitious activities, okay, and then the pollution of the river, major environmental disaster. These days, the rivers are dying because we humans are throwing the garbages in the rivers. We are spoiling it. So it's time to clean the rivers. Rivers are getting polluted. So that is also a very important environmental movement. Okay, then movement against female foeticide. So this is one of the social movements, not in my name, etc. Not in my name, maybe any property or something like that. So it could be the movement. Do you know? Here, I just scroll the page. Students, do you know civic problems need not originate only in the social sphere? They can emerge from any section of the society. In India, especially in Maharashtra, many social reform movements were started and society started getting modernized. Our struggle for independence was also a social movement. The issues like protecting rights of citizens, right to vote, minimum wages, the economic security are the focus of political and economic movements. Swadeshi movement is an important economic movement. Okay? And now we come to the important movements in India. Students, just will deal with the tribal movement and then we will conclude with this session. We will end up with this particular session. So students, tribal movement. Can you see the tribal man on the screen? Yes. See the way the man is. See the way he looks like. He is not at all a city dweller. He is a tribal man. So students, tribal movement. In the pre-independence period, the British government deprived tribal people of their right to livelihood on forest resources. Please take note. In the pre-independence period, means before the independence, the British government took away tribal people of their right to livelihood on forest resources. Fair or unfair? Very much unfair. There was a tribal uprising in Kollam from Chota Nagpur Gond from Orissa, Koli, Bhilla and Ramoshis from Maharashtra, Santhal and Munda from Bihar. The tribal struggle has continued since those years. Tribals in India face several problems. One major problem is that they are denied right over forest. Please take note. What is the meaning of denied right over forest? Means whatever the forest products are, the Adivasis were not allowed to touch them, not allowed to use them, utilize them, or sell them out. Okay? Because it was marked as the forest property, the forest production was marked as the government's property, and only the governments will have the right over it. So the Adivasis were deprived away from it. They were denied right over the forests. The main demand of the tribal movement is to accept their right over forest. They should be allowed to collect products of forest and also have a right to cultivate on forest land. So this is what speaking about their rights, that yes, the farmers should have rights, should be allowed to collect the products of the forest, yeah, and also should have right to cultivate on forest land. So students, tribal community consciousness is strong. Please take note. When we are speaking about the tribals, their consciousness is strong. Tribal movements were not only agrarian, means working for agriculture, but also forest based. Some revolts were ethnic in nature, as these were directed against zamindari, zamindars, moneylenders and petty governments, officials who were not only their exploiters but aliens too. So students, why tribal movements took place from time to time? It's only because these tribals were suppressed very much by the zamindars or the moneylenders. They were also tortured by the laws and orders imposed by the government officials on them, and so they were exploited. Then students, when the tribals were unable to pay their loan or the interest thereon, moneylenders and landlords usurped their lands, usurped, confiscated, took forcibly their lands. The tribals thus became tenants on their own land and sometimes even bonded laborers. The police and the revenue officer means the person who collects the taxes. The police and the revenue officers never helped them. On the contrary, they also used the tribals for personal and government work without any payment. So much injustice. I'm just speaking in detail about it, that how these tribals were suppressed and oppressed from different sources of the society. Moreover, students, the court were not only ignorant of the tribal agrarian system and customs, but also were unaware of the plight of the tribals, problems of the tribals. Government, court, they were very much unaware about it. So all these factors of land alienation, assumptions, forced labor, minimum wages, and land grabbing compelled many tribes like Munda, Santals, Kols, Bhils, Warlis, etc. in many regions like Assam, Orissa, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, and Maharashtra to revolt. The management of the forest also led some tribes to revolt, as forests in some regions are the main sources of their livelihood. The British government had introduced certain legislations, means certain laws, permitting merchants and contractors to cut the forests. These rules not only deprived the tribals of several forest products, but also made them victims of harassments by the forest officials. This led tribes in Andhra Pradesh and some other areas to launch movements. So I hope students you got to know the reason behind the movements. Moreover, students, as far as revolts were concerned, it was said that though these revolts were neither numerous or gravely frequent, now and then, there were not many movements. Yet there were scarcely any major tribe in middle or eastern India which at times in the last 150 years had not resorted to launching movements. Please take note. Who will go and launch the movement? To register their protest and despair. So the problem was so much serious that who will raise the voice against the injustice inflicted was the major issues of this tribal people. Some studies on tribal movements have been conducted and reported in northeast and central India. However, there were an insignificant number of movements or none at all among the tribals of the southern states. This is so because the tribes down south are too primitive, too small in numbers, and too isolated in their habitat to organize movements. So coming together, working together, this discipline they don't understand the importance of an organized movement and therefore they lag behind. So in spite of their exploitation and the resultant discontent, L.K. Mahapatra also has observed that we do not find any significant social, religious, status mobility or political movement among the numerical, small and migratory tribes. Means they keep on suffering. They don't protest. They don't launch any movement. They just undergo the sufferings, the oppression and the suppression. So here students, I hope you have understood the causes of the movement and the impact of those movements, either launching it or not launching it, but the sufferers were the tribal people. So students, here I make it clear that after independence, the tribal movements may be classified into three groups. Now we have discussed about the pre-independence period. I'm just speaking about the after independence. Post-independence, the tribal movements may be classified into three groups. Movements due to exploitation by outsiders, like those of the Santals and the Mundas. Next, movements due to economic deprivation, like those of the Gonds in Madhya Pradesh and Mahars in Andhra Pradesh, and movements due to the separatist tendencies, like those of the Nagas and the Mizos. Okay. So students, please take note, the tribal movements may also be classified on the basis of their orientation all round in four types. You will find that the movements seeking political autonomy, yes, autonomy that is self-governing. So you will find certain tribal movements like they are struggling for the seeking political autonomy, political power and formation of a state. And the state like Nagas, Mizoram, Jharkhand, those tribal people are struggling too much. Then they also struggle for agrarian movements. Now and then the issues are raised as far as agriculture is concerned. So agrarian movements are there. Then they also deal with the forest-based movements and socio-religious or socio-cultural movements. The Bhagat movement among the Bhils of Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, movement among the tribals of South Gujarat, or Raghunath Murmu's movement among the Santals. So these are some movements. They are struggling, striving hard to get justice. So students, these movements indicate that tribals adopted two paths of achieving goal. Okay, please take note. Sometimes the movements are very much violent and sometimes they are very much non-violent. But many times the tribal people, they adopt two paths of achieving goals. Non-violent path of bargaining and negotiating with the government and using a variety of pressure tactics without resorting to violence or revolts. Then next is the militant path of revolt or mass struggles based on developing the fighting power of the exploited or oppressed tribal strata. Students, please take note. So we have studied the non-violent. So they try their level best to follow the non-violent path, but then too sometimes they are forced to follow they have to resort to the violent path, but they just try to control themselves. Okay. Then the militant path of revolts, mass struggle. Okay. Students, both the types, like both the path of achieving goals, what will be the consequences? What will be the results? The results of both these paths are different. Okay. When we are speaking about the non-violent path, that indicates struggle oriented to reform, while the other indicates a structural transformation of the community. The fact that tribals continue to be faced with problems and also continue to feel discontented and deprived bring to the fore the conclusion that both paths have not helped them achieve their goals. Please take note. Either it may be the non-violent path or the militant path. They try their level best to follow the both, but the consequences of both these paths, they differed from each other and they couldn't help to solve the basic problems of the tribal people. Okay. So students, I hope you have understood about the tribal movements. The next class we meet will begin with the farmer movement in India. Okay. So till then we meet in the next class. Do take good care of yourself. Okay. Have a nice day ahead. Thank you for hearing me patiently. Bye.